It's time for us to move into feedback, and for this feedback I'm going to add not a parental guidance, not a PG, but a VG, a vegetarian guidance. Because if you are a vegetarian, or if you don't like meat, or beef in particular, then I would suggest that now is the time to just take a chill pill, maybe go make yourself a cup of tea, maybe make yourself a vegetarian burger. And when you come back, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a vegetarian burger. I think it's fantastic. That's your choice. It's fantastic. When you come back, you may want to join us for the next feature, which is fantastic. Somebody did ask, when is Dan Petlansky coming on the show? He is coming on the show at about 11:30, so listen up for that. Because now we're going to be talking about beef, and more meat. Okay, so the vegetarian guidance has gone up and it's ready. In the studio with us is Steve Maresch. He's the owner of the Local Grill, and the Local Grill is one of the finalists for the 2014 Wolf Trap Steakhouse Championships. Amongst the other restaurants that are finalists are HQ in the Western Cape, Fahrenheit in the East Rand, The Godfather in Pretoria, and Theo's in the Western Cape in Willie Point. And then, of course, there is the Local Grill here in Johannesburg. Steve, as always, thank you very much for joining us.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you.
So we're talking about meat and extraordinary meat. And the reason it kind of came up was a little while ago, we were chatting to, I can't remember who was on the show and how the conversation came out, but we were talking about Argentinian beef and how extraordinary that is. So let's jump in. Let's go to Argentina and tell me a little bit about that kind of meat, the meat that comes out of Argentina.
Great. I think being a Local Grill and not only being passionate about the beef we serve, but being more an obsession. I've been trying beef from Australia, from Argentina, and I keep reverting back to our wonderful South African local beef. It's very, very difficult to compare a beef if it's not apples with apples. So knowing that the South African beef, AAA Prime, which is what we all eat and know is much leaner than beef of Australia, of Argentina, of America, and good and bad. There are, we can debate those issues, but I did import Argentinian beef and have it in the restaurant for a while, because one of our frequent diners is the Argentinian ambassador, and I really wanted to do something that would obviously knock his socks off and make him feel at home. Anyway, I rushed to the table and said, Mr. Ambassador, I've got great news for you. We've got some of your Argentinian ribeye in. And he just shook his head and he said, no, thank you. I'd rather have yours.
But
so
that was a
major compliment. I couldn't imitate that.
Yeah.
But there was an amazing accolade, I think, for someone that would know and has grown up on Argentinian beef to say no, thank you. We did give him a taste anyway, and he said he's now got used to our South African flavors of in our beef, and that's what he prefers.
So I know this is maybe a difficult thing, but what is the difference between South African beef and perhaps Australian and Argentinian beef? How does it taste? Is it saltier? Is it sweeter?
There's a lot more intramuscular fat or marbling in the Argentinian beef and the Australian beef, because the grading system is totally different to what we have here. Our beef is graded more according to the age, the size of the animal, and obviously the fat as well, but not as per Australian, where you get a grading, as I said, based on the intramuscular fat, and that intramuscular fat translates to flavor, and obviously it requires an animal that's a lot older. When I say a lot older, we harvest between 10 to 12 months, and that's our good grain-fed South African beef, which is wonderfully tasty. It is lean, and we just can't age it as long as you can a more fattier piece of meat. And according to Tim Noakes these days, everyone's asking me for fattier beef. So we obviously have to look deeper, and we have to find fattier beef, and in our quest for finding South Africa's best beef, going through the different breeds, we've come to realize that we need to mix it up a little bit. We need to find some possibly older beef, and older meaning to spend more time on grass, possibly less time on grain, or more time on grain, because grain's a great finisher, and that whole grass grain debate has sort of become old school now. The way of thinking now is more on the lines of field to fork, understanding where the beef comes from, with our kitchen tours, we're meeting a lot more farmers, and the beef clubs obviously that we run once a month. We have a lunch at the restaurant. We have farmers come to talk about their different breeds. It's certainly opened our eyes to ways of finding better beef, and that's the mission.
So you mentioned older beef, and perhaps you could explain for our listeners what Kobe beef is.
All right, that's a very frequently asked question. Kobe beef is a breed called Wagyu. Wagyu, as pronounced, means Japanese beef. It's a beef that's globally sold probably at the highest price. That price is then based on the amount of intramuscular fat. So the fattier it is, the more value it has. It's widely farmed in Australia and New Zealand, farmed in South Africa by a farmer by the name of Brian Angus, who's the president of the South African Wagyu Association, and that farms in the Free State, not far away from our farm. So we spent time with him, and it's a medium-sized bovine that does produce incredible beef. In fact, there's nothing quite like it locally. But it's a temperamental. It comes at a premium because of the size, because of the yield on the animal, and a lot is to do with the conversion of feed to muscle mass. And some breeds convert better, more efficiently. Wagyu doesn't, but then it produces amazing flavored beef. So we do have Wagyu on the menu. And in fact, Brian Angus is very much part of the local grill, not only with his advice and helping us finding better beef, but he's won our Ultimate Beef challenge every year, which is something.
Oh, there's a whole load of stuff I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about this new, the Tim Noakes, the fat, the increase in fat, and how that impacts in a restaurant like yours. I want to talk about something called Himalayan salt cooking. But before I get there, and I want to just raise something, I'm sure some people are thinking this, is, it's interesting how you talk about from field to fork. There are all these kind of concepts where we are looking at an animal that finally ends up on your plate. And of course, for a vegetarian, that's a very difficult thing to kind of even hear or deal with, or they're just not interested. And certainly for some of us who are maybe a little queasy, the idea that it is a living creature and it is a cow that then becomes beef is hard. How have you, in your personal, this is a business decision that you made to get involved in the local grill. How did you kind of wrap your head around that?
The first step was very exciting. There was to actually become, the farmer and understand where the product comes from, how it is farmed, the incredibly difficult task that farmers and beef producers have to, provide us with the best beef. Never mind drought, but also disease, and that's a whole different topic. But South Africa being a net importer of protein, including beef, we really have to find ways of, doing it better. So holistic farming, very important, but sustainable farming has become key. And that means we have to have grain-fed beef. But we've been looking far and deep to find those beef producers that produce us, and there's another way of putting it, happy beef, happy cows, that aren't stressed, because stress-free beef is more tender beef. Any animal that is stressed is going to not deliver well on the plate, is not going to be able to age properly. So we've done a lot of research and spent a lot of time on the farms with the farmers, and that's really taught us a lot, but also taught them a lot, understanding what our demands are. And often we get new producers coming in, and we say, taste our beef, can you match that? And they often go away saying, we've got a lot of homework still to do. But I'm very proud to say that our suppliers are fantastic like that.
We're talking to Steve Maresch. He's the owner of the local grill, one of the final 5 steakhouses for the 2014 Wolf Trap Steakhouse Championships. If you've got questions around beef, around meat, 34701 is our SMS number, 34701, and our phone number is 0891 104 207. I mentioned the fact that you are one of the finalists, and off air we were talking about this idea that you have to push the envelope for steakhouses, not just that you say, okay, I want a fillet steak or rump steak, and then you go and the griller just goes dish, 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 and slaps it back on the plate. There's now, you are pushing the envelope around ideas of meat, and one of the things that you raised was this idea of Himalayan salt cooking. What is that?
We're very lucky in both Parktown North and Woodstock Restaurant to have a demo test kitchen. That allows us to bring people through, behind the scenes, so to speak, and see what we do, but also to run beef appreciation classes, where there we share some of our crazy ideas. And one of those that's stuck with us is the Himalayan salt cooking, where we import Himalayan salt slabs from Pakistan. The joke is why we call it Himalayan salt if it's from Pakistan, but we sort of think that if it was called Punjabi salt, it might not have the same the same appeal. But really it is Himalayan salt, and it's pure. It was formed between 200 to 500 million years ago. So with that history and the beautiful flavor we get from it, we actually cook steaks on the slabs of salt. So have a Weber in the kitchen, we fire up the gas, we put the Himalayan salt slab on the gas, and we heat it up for about half an hour, and we cook steaks on there. And that is certainly very unique. Unfortunately, can't be served in the restaurant because we've had one of those blocks literally explode. But there is a lot that you can do with it, and the flavors are great. And cooking on wood staves as well, that's been something that's also stuck. But the tours of the kitchen and the sharing is what allows us to push the envelope, as you say, and that is so important to make beef more than just that.
Do you think that beef is, you can change the taste of beef according to what you cook it on? So if you're cooking it on salt, yes, but if you cook it on wood or if you cook it on gas, whatever the case may be?
Absolutely, and part of beef appreciation is to do exactly that, where we compare different cuts. So, we go through the primal cuts, fillet, rump, sirloin, which is the norm. We then cook them on Himalayan salt, on the wood staves, on the gas braai, and it's amazing to taste the difference in end result. And that's every night. The showstoppers this week has been the wood staves, but the Himalayan salt always gets the most interest.
Wow, well, it's a fantastic name as well. Also off air we were talking about, there is the Tim Noakes diet, which everybody is raving about, and now I see that Time magazine has said maybe we got it all wrong about fat. So I imagine that you've got people who are coming into the restaurant and suddenly they are eschewing the bread, they don't want the bread anymore, and they want big chunks of meat. How are you dealing with it? How are you shifting? Are you able to shift what you're offering?
You're quite right. A year ago, people were asking us for our bread recipe. Now they push the bread aside gingerly, and we're very fortunate because it happens so often now that we sort of are primed and know what to do. So we've converted our mash to a sweet potato mash with lots of butter in it. So that's really amazing. And obviously through our menu, we've been able to identify which items can be left off certain dishes to give us a very wide choice for those Banting-friendly or Tim Noakes dieters. I've been on it for 4 months, and I can tell you there are significant changes, but it's quite interesting to hear the debates.
Okay, we don't have much time left, so I'm going to quickly go through some of the questions. Pearl says, my mother says too much beef causes gout. How much is too much?
I think if it's good beef, personally I eat beef every day, and gout? What's that?
Gout, Pearl, I think you have to tell your mother to maybe just not eat meat for a while, and then once the gout is gone, you can start again. Someone says, and there are 2 questions here, so it's the same question, but 2 different. Good morning, I trust your guest would understand what the halal concept is about. Is your beef that? And Ibrahim from Durban says, it's very interesting. Is it possible to get the best grade beef or steak halal or kosher?
We have a wonderful following of halal customers. We cook the beef on a separate pan because the beef source, both Sharma, Karen and Greenfields, are certified halal slaughterers. So their process is absolutely that. We have the certification up in the restaurant, but we do not ever say that we are strictly halal, because we obviously do sell alcohol on the premises. There is pork on the menu, but we certainly do everything that we can to make sure that there is no contamination, and that the beef, the halal portions are, as I said before, are cooked in a separate skillet. It takes a little longer, but fortunately everyone understands that, and that we can guarantee.
Okay, so then someone says, what nonsense. Most grain is GMO. I'm not sure what GMO is. Genetically modified. Yeah. Best beef in South Africa is good old natural grass feed, Botswana and Zimbabwe cows. Most beef out of South America is also grass fed, ... Cows don't naturally eat grain. It causes inflammation in the stomach, and they're then pumped full of antibiotics. Hence the necessity to genetically modify the corn. That's from Leon in Cape Town. You've got 50 seconds to respond to that.
Leon, thanks for putting me on the spot as I'm supposed to close off here, but I just think that it is a long debate and worth chatting about. You're welcome to give me a call in the restaurant. We can talk about it. But I do think that sustainability, feeding the nation, I think has to be priority. Unfortunately, there is space for grain and grass. Absolutely, we sell both grain and grass-fed beef through our restaurants, and we'll always do so.
Very good. That was very, very diplomatic. What is your phone number if people want to get hold of you at the local grill?
Johannesburg is 011-880-1946, or send me an email, steve@localgrill.co.za.
steve@localgrill.co.za, and one of the 5 finalists for the Wolf Trap Steakhouse Championships. You're going to know on Tuesday, I understand. We wish you all the best. We don't want to sound like we are being sort of what's it? I've forgotten what the word is, but we don't want to sound biased. But we don't want to sound like that. But we do hope that it goes very well. Steve, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
11 o'clock, time for the news.